Welcome to Health Oddity, the show that strips away the jargon and hype surrounding all things health and fitness to help you live a long, strong and energetic life. Lining up at the bar this week, here's Peter Lant, Paul Bassett and James St. Pierre.
Hello and welcome to Health Oddity, episode 31. We are back with the usual suspects, Mr. Peter Lant. Say hello.
Hello, how are we doing?
And say hello.
Nobody can answer that. That's what's funny. Say how we're doing, and all the listeners are like, "We're doing fine." Everyone should be shouting at their computer screen or wherever they are.
And say hello, Mr. Paul Bassett.
Hello. But the thing is, I watch a lot of children's TV because I've got a toddler and a 5-year-old, and the presenters are always saying, "Hey, how are you?" And the kids actually do shout back.
Oh, well, there you go then. Yeah. And also, I just want to, if you're not watching on video, Paul is going to do a cookery demonstration halfway through the podcast. So if you hear an oven door slamming, that's Paul whacking the pizza in.
And we are welcoming back an exceptionally special guest today. He has been here for A New Hope. He has been here for The Empire Strikes Back, and he has now returned for Return of the Jedi. Is none other than Mr. Dan John. Welcome back, sir.
Hi, kids.
Okay, so last time we had Dan on was about a month ago, I think, and we spoke about, we've gone through Dan's 1, 2, 3, 4 assessment, and Dan has very kindly agreed to come back on today. And as always with Dan, we're not 100% sure what we're going to talk about, but it all makes sense and it all seems to work in the end because he has a brain like that. So we've written down gaps, standards and programming, and we're just going to see kind of where we go with that, and we'll ask questions on the way, and Dan will do his usual and impart his wisdom to us in a fun, energetic, lively, informative and relaxed way. So hello, Dan.
Hey, how are you guys doing? Good? Seriously?
Yeah.
You safe?
Very good, thank you. Very good, mate. Yeah.
Good. The world's gone a little crazy, but let's try to make it a better place by talking about health and strength. Okay. Yeah. Yes. So here's the thing. So let's get back, gentle listener. Let's go back just a quick 10 seconds. So basically, when I work with people mentally, I separate them out almost instantly between an everybody else client, which you general, it doesn't, I don't care what you call them, but you have active athletes and then you have everybody else. And the problem is the toolkit for goal setting that most people use come from active athletes. And we all know what it is. It's that A to B thing. And I'm going from here to there, and the TO here to there. That's the job of a coach. And a coach literally comes from the term coach, which is a 4-wheeled carriage that you throw people on board and you take them from here to there. And there's the $1 million problem when you work with the bulk of the population. I joke about it being 99.999999999, but it's true. Very few people are active athletes, but we take that toolkit from active athletes and goal setting. So I sit young James down and he weighs 155 kilos. And I say, "What do you want?" And he says, "I want to get down to 150. And so mentally we do this A to B thing. And the truth is it doesn't work with everybody else. A better way, I usually say A, not A, but a better way to look at most normal clients is, you see this guy here, see me? That's not me. I'm 21 years old. I got the hottest girl on Utah State's campus as a girlfriend. I'm an elite discus thrower. My picture's in the paper every week. That's me. This 63, 64-year-old guy you're seeing today, oh, that's not me. Mm-hmm. So when you work with general population, you really have to deal with that. This isn't who I am. And that's why we do the 1, 2, 3, 4 assessment, is to figure out without any words. There are the questions, how many pillows and colorful vegetables and exercise, but you'll notice with all those questions, none of them have a real, like I'm not asking anything political. I'm not asking anything I'm asking kind of strange, how many pillows do you need to sleep comfortably? No one will lie to you about that question because no one knows that there's a secret answer. So just let's do that right there. So if you have more questions, go back to the last episode, and that'll give you how I deal with general population, how I get. They're going to tell me something that doesn't mean anything. They're going to say they want to lose weight, but what they're basically saying is, this isn't me. And that's why it's so important to have an assessment that allows me to, okay, so you're either, and I hate to be so either orish, but it ends up with three categories: body composition, that's losing fat, increasing lean body mass; mobility, which is the free movement of joints, which is very important; and then strength. And oddly, most men need mobility work, but all they want to do is lift weights, and most women need strength work, and they just want to do yoga or mobility. So part of the job of coaching is to drive people into not what they want, but what they need. And so for me, the job of the coach, the four-wheeled carriage, for my job as a coach with the general population, is to get men on mobility bandwagon, which I do, by the way, by having them. I tell you, if you want to get a man to do anything, have him bench press and do mobility. Have him do curls and then mobility, tricep extensions and then mobility, and whatever you can do for the lower body and mobility. For women, pick a period. This sounds crazy, but find an early period in the workout where you get them sweaty, and then focus on strength the rest of the time. When we move over to our good friends in elite sports, now we have A to B. So that is true. You're a 50-meter discus thrower and you want to become a 60-meter discus thrower. And it's generally pretty simple, for me anyway, to help you, because the path is so clear in my head. It is, and I guess this is the problem we have when you take someone from my background, performance, and try to ask them to help out over here with general population. Everybody I work with in performance, their A is how far they threw last year, how high they jumped, what place they took. If you're at the bottom of the ladder, and what is that thing that happens in soccer when you go from the bottom of the ladder, you get dropped down into the
relegation,
relegated to the next league down.
Yeah. If you hire me just after you've been relegated, it's pretty obvious to everybody we need to turn things around, right? So sports is pretty easy, if you will. At the Olympic trials, you came in as a 65-meter discus thrower and you threw 51. It's pretty obvious that there's some issues we need to work on, okay? So the two big things that float out there are standards and gaps. And gaps are pretty obvious to me. And that's why you hire me to come in. And it's weird because I'm going to save you a lot of money right now, because there's generally two gaps: authentic squatting and loaded carries. And that's why that whoever came up with the goblet squat, whoever that genius, whatever that, it's the day after St. Patrick's, and whoever this person who came up with it should be sainted, at least. But the idea behind the goblet squat was to teach people to squat deeply without freaking out. And so that's why when I came up with the goblet squat, the idea of the goblet squat is, here's a safe, deep, authentic squat. Now, when I teach it, we then move to like a broomstick overhead, or we go goblet squat, overhead squat, front squat, back squat, and I try to retrain the athletes, even in a massive program, 120 athletes, to squat authentically. The nice thing about the goblet squat, if you have a 400-kilo back squat and a 24-kilo goblet squat makes you go deep, your ego isn't getting challenged. But if I put 60 kilos on your back and say squat deep, your ego is going to get in the way of your squat. The next thing, of course, is loaded carries, which I believe build work capacity better than most of the nonsense we do. And the fact that most programs don't do any loaded carries. Now, I have to be careful about that, is when I was talking like this in 2001, even up to 2009, 10, 11, audiences would be scribbling down loaded carry with question marks behind it, you know. But now if I say farmer walk, suitcase carry, waiter walk, sled pull, prowler, most of the time people are, yeah, we do that already, which makes me very happy because, you know, if my legacy on this planet Earth is the goblet squat and loaded carries, it's not bad. It's not bad. I mean, that's pretty good. So those are the two biggest gaps. Okay, those are the gaps I generally find almost immediately. Honestly, and this is going to sound kind of strange in a way, we could probably stop there for most programs. It's called intervention. I call it interventions. Most programs, and walk away, and in 3 weeks, 6 weeks, months, I'm going to get feedback that that was an absolute ground changing thing. So if I'm working with an elite athlete, and it's very common with American sports, if they've ever squatted, it's not a squat. So by adding the goblet squat and teaching, it's weird to teach an elite athlete the overhead squat. And by the way, it's just with a broomstick. So you drop down with the goblet squat, push your knees out, curl the weight to the ground, pick up the stick, put it over your head, stand up, sit back down, put the stick back on the ground, curl the goblet back up, stand up, and you just, I have videos on it, my YouTube. It's one of my favorite exercises. But you'll have an athlete who's really, I mean, not only a great athlete, but makes a lot of money, sweating profusely. I mean, just pouring sweat with a stick that weighs, I mean, almost nothing, because the body is being challenged so hard. This highlights mobility issues, it highlights strength issues, it movement issues, highlights everything. So sometimes I stop there. And then the next thing is what I call standards. Now, for those of you who want more standards, I'm going to give you an example right now, but for those of you who want more, on my website, danjohn.net, I have just type in danjohn.net. Almost universally, this one comes up. I called this particular blog Sleepless in Seattle, because I was in Seattle when I wrote it. And I have just a bunch of just weird standards, some from American high school athletes. I expect my American high school athletes, you should be able to clean 95 kilos, front squat 95 kilos, if you're a 15, 16, 17-year-old. I mean, that's just, I expect it. I'll get emails from men who are in their 20s and 30s, and so they'll say, well, I can't do that. And I'll be like, well, then, yeah, you're not as strong as a typical, what do you want me to say? You know, but
and
I have.
to ask you a question. When you said about you look at a program and you're assessing gaps in programs, what where you kind of come from in terms of your career and things, would you typically be looking at, like you say, like a college team sort of program or a high school program?
Professional.
So and professional sports. Yeah.
So it would be the United States and British military. It would be American professional sports, European rugby, university teams here in the United States, and then our high school programs. Yeah.
Yeah, so you're not talking about looking at an individual's programs, although it still applies, obviously. But
we're talking about active. No, you're right. I would also do the same thing. Like if you're a guy, if you're some guy from California who wants to be we email or talk on the phone or something. Yeah. And if you don't mind, usually I don't go here. Okay, just remember I stopped on standards and I'm adding one other thing. Okay, so if you want to go a little bit more user friendly for locals, for kind of less than professionals. So the first thing I look at is the gaps, and that's almost universally squat, loaded carry. The next thing I look at a set of numbers. I just do the math real quick, and I add up the number of pushes you do in your program. So 5 sets of 5 of 2 exercise is 50 reps a workout. Okay. I look at the push, the pull, and the squat numbers. I expect at the end of each week that the push, pull, and squat numbers be the exact same. And what we find in American programs is and this is an actual example because I memorized it. We had a program that had 237 pushes a week, 115 pulls, and 25 squats.
Yeah. But that's
So
because, like, obviously you can see this coming, right?
Well, and then if
So it doesn't
Peter,
matter
there's
about what's behind.
yeah. Well, and here's the thing I tell my athletes all the time: never fear anybody who looks good walking towards you.
Yeah.
Big pecs, big biceps. Don't fear that guy. If someone turns around, they got huge spinal erectors, massive butt, massive hamstrings, massive calves, huge traps, you're in trouble.
Yeah.
That guy's going to hit you and hit you hard. So what happens is that the person will send me a program, and it'll send me and it'll be okay, I fixed it, Dan. And so here's today's workout: 50 pushes, 25 pulls, 25 squats. And I'll say, no, they have to be weekly, have to be the same numbers. And what begins to we morph into, they finally come around, that you do an upper body push, 5 sets of 5, an upper body pull, 5 sets of 5, 3 sets of 8, whatever, and a squat movement, 5 sets of 5, whatever. And at the end of the week, my kind of the number that comes up best almost always is at the end of each week, you'd have 75 pushes, 75 pulls, 75 squats. In that, doesn't have to be perfect, but that's so that's 3 workouts of about 25-ish reps of each. Well, then someone will raise their hand. Well, I want to do upper body push. I want to do vertical push, vertical pull, vertical horizontal push, horizontal pull. Good. That means you need to do a lot of squats then.
Yeah.
And they're like, wait a sec. And what that does, by having the squat, especially in the North American, by having the squat as the limiting number for the push and pull, we get rid of all those shoulder overuse injuries, and all the word now is impingement. Dan, I have an impingement. Well, most of the time, impingement means you're an idiot, that you overdid something for 10 years, and now your body is saying, we don't know what you want, so we're just going to break until you figure it out. Then the third thing is standards. Okay, my standards for females. I noticed an interesting thing years ago, that when a high school girl, 14, 15, 16-year-old, deadlifted 125 kilos, that what happened in the weight room translated onto the field of play. Now, it was strange, and of course, we don't have as many numbers as we need for females yet, but I am working on it, and many other people are. But that 125 kilos seems to be this weird little number. Doesn't matter about size or where the weight room suddenly shows up on the field of play. So that would be an interesting standard to have into a program for females. I often tell people, if you deadlift about 150, that makes you the 5th strongest person in my home, and only because my dog doesn't have opposable thumbs and can't hold on to the bar, but my wife and daughters, can handle that. So when we move into standards, this becomes an important one. Let me pull one up real quick for you. I put one aside here just to show it to you real quick. So one of the things I like is the Finns, the Finland Finns, have done a real nice job with some numbers. So here are the numbers, what they expect for a jumper. Now, a jumper is the high jump, long jump, pole vault, and triple jump. They expect a 16-year-old to do a 90-kilo squat, an 80-kilo clean, and a 50 to 60 kilo snatch. Now, I look at those numbers and I nod along because, I'm like, yeah, that is what my experience says. Their numbers for an elite open performer are a 160 squat, which is not bad because most of these guys weigh about 70 to 75 kilos. A 140 clean, again, think about their size, and a 90-kilo snatch. And I'm not trying to be a jerk at all, but these are the numbers that show up. So if you're not up to standard, then there's we have an American comedian who says, here's your sign. If you want to be an elite discus thrower, the numbers are 115 snatch, again 140, 140 clean. That seems to just keep showing up. That 140 clean shows up everywhere. About a 200 kilo bench and about a 250 squat. None of those numbers are very good. I mean, there's not anybody who's a thrower in the audience is going, geez, I did that when I was 12 or 11. I was benching 200 kilos in my backyard, by myself. But that's a joke. But there's two sides to the standards issue, and the most important is this. If I'm working with James and he's wants to be an elite discus thrower and he snatches 60 kilos, and he's got to get to 115. Well, the next 6 months to a year or two is pretty clear. James, we got to get you in the weight room, and you got to get your Olympic lifts up. He might already have the 200 kilo bench, but and once we get you to 115, you're going to see the discus go farther. Okay. Then there's the other side that most people miss. I snatched 142, I cleaned 182.5. I benched whatever I benched, and if I wasn't throwing, and there were seasons I wasn't throwing international numbers, it wasn't the weight room's fault. It was those other issues that were in the way. And so this is a hard thing when you work with elite athletes, is because there's a certain breed of elite athlete who wants to answer all questions in the weight room. And the truth is, that's great, but now you got to get it. Your problem is your arousal level, your ability to deal with the issues of competition, the small things. When I remember when a couple of years back, it was two World Cups ago. I mentioned this story a lot because I watched all the games. When Germany just completely dominated, you might remember the one game. Did they beat? Was it Brazil? They beat 7-1 or something like that. It was just and the German coaches that year decided to dominate the dead ball situations, and they decided to. And if you get a chance, it would be a great video to piece together. Is every single dead ball situation? It seems like the Germans came out with another. Okay, here's a new idea we've never seen before. Now, obviously, every coach after that World Cup said, "Okay, we got to be better at dead ball situations." So 4 years later, the Germans don't do well at all. Physically, I thought they looked better, but their problem was they needed to keep spinning that thing upward too. So this is the key. So if you're snatching 115 and cleaning 140, you're not throwing 55 to 60 meters in the discus. That's your technique, your ability to control your arousal, your ability to understand the winds. It's going to be out there. It makes sense. Okay, so let's go through what I call the system for elite athletes. Any questions pop up yet?
I had one question where you said about the balancing the program and the push, the pull, and the squat, the 75 reps per week. Where do you put hinge in there as well? Do you use
No. Okay, so that's actually a good question, and that's shocking. Thank you for getting the joke. The hinge, the way I say about the hinge is, what do you mean by a hinge? So if your workout today is to warm up and pull 400 kilos for a single, and my workout is to take a 20 kilo bell and, okay, there's gonna be a math issue here. So, and swing it 40 times, both loads, or whatever it is, I got 20, both loads, when you do the math, are 400 kilos. What was a better workout? Well, I mean, I'm going to side with that big deadlift, but somebody else could say, well, no, I'm trying to do a fat loss program. And that's what you follow. So with the hinge, what do you mean by the hinge? When I come out, James, I'll go through this in much more depth, but if you're doing something like the glute bridge, the isometric, and you hold that for 2 minutes with an ab squeeze and a glute loop around your knees, and you're pulling against bands, and you hold that for 2 minutes, you know, you're going to walk funny you're going to have that weird duck walk for about 20 minutes. If we're doing on the floor hip thrusts, and we get into the hundreds on hip thrusts and clamshells on some of our butt workouts here at my gym. You know, so with the problem with the hinge, if I'm snatching, like I have a weightlifting meet on the May 15th, and so I'm snatching 10 reps a day, 5 days a week. So it's 2 sets of 5, 5 sets of 2, 5, 3, 2, singles, whatever the workout calls for. So what you have to do with the hinge is what do you mean? There's just a little bit more. And by the way, loaded carries, I just tell people to do them. I don't give them any parameters at all. So push, pull, squat, I like the numbers to be the exact same. Hinge is going to be a continuum, and the loaded carry is to do them. Okay.
Yeah, excellent. Thank you.
Sure. Any other questions before I go down the rabbit hole again?
These we're talking about standards for an elite athlete. So yeah. for I suppose for many of our listeners who are obviously not the other percentage, the 99.99%. I mean, those are kind of crazy numbers for people to get their heads around.
Paul, you made the mistake already. So can you go the 1, 2, 3 assessment, 1, 2, 3, 4 assessment, I'm sorry, and then the more basic numbers? For example, my friend Paul Lysingo on the Sleepless in Seattle, we have some for regular people. For example, a 1 is just being able to do a goblet squat. So we have a 1 to 7 thing. Honestly, I think if you're a man, and if you can do double 32s for 10 reps in the double kettlebell front squat, you're as strong as you'll ever need to be for anything you'll ever need to do. You follow? So the standards for everybody else. And here's the other issue. There's just, you know, if we sat down with 100 people, that'd be a good book actually, and just came up with standards and there's probably 1 million standards for everybody else. One of the standards that we have here in the United States, if you can't sit down on the toilet by yourself, that means it's time for you to go to assisted care. That's a standard. And I know that's not a very high standard, but when people ask me about why I push squatting so much, one of the things I take them aside, I go, do you have an aunt, uncle, grandparent who's been in assisted living? And then they'll get this look on their face like, oh, dear God. Yeah, I know. And it's terrible. It smells awful there. And grandpa cries when we leave because he hates it there so much. Okay. Well, you can help yourself not get there by practicing these goblet squats and keeping your mobility and keeping your strength up. You know, live long and drop dead. You know, so that is the issue that people run into all the time when I give this talk, is you asked me to slide into active athletes, so now I'm talking about active athletes, gaps, standards. Certainly, you could, and it's interesting. In fact, actually, I'm glad you did that, Paul, because what happens is this is what happens all the time. I come in from performance athletics, and you asked me to give a goal setting workshop to a bunch of teenagers. Well, I'm going to tell them A to B, right? Here you are today, and 10 years from now. And really what I need to do is, and I have, and when I do give these little motivational workshops to teenagers, by the way, putting a bullet in my head is slightly easier. Someone's crawling around behind you, Paul. Seriously, Paul called me.
My wife.
Someone's trying to take you on, man. Holy cow.
I don't know what's going wrong.
Hey, is that your wife?
It is.
Hey, tell her I'm running out of coffee too, man.
She's being polite. She's not. Because I wouldn't say that normally.
We're about to have a domestic podcast.
So how do you guys call
it later?
How do you guys call 911? What is it again?
999.
999, yeah.
I've got a knife now.
Okay. So what happens is I come into this workshop for teenagers, and I've had to actually remind myself not to go A to B on them, because these are not elite throwers. And so I've learned to go, I've learned to actually change that workshop to me, not me, a little bit. When we talk about gaps and standards, yes, it's true. When I look at a normal personal trainer's program for a normal person, there's massive gaps, and they don't have any standards. So the tools of performance assist everybody else. In the same way I try, and I'm so happy you help with Taylor's work with cystic fibrosis. Our basic in the Dan John Black Belt program, the idea is that I want people who work with elite performance athletes, but who also take on an underserved population. And the idea, if it works for people with cystic fibrosis and it works for multi-billion-dollar athletes, we can assume it's going to work for the other 98% or more. So just keep that in mind. Let me just so the system for coaching the A to B athletes pretty simple. The first thing is you need to train appropriate to the goal, and and let's just go real quick. I don't know if I've done this for you before, James. If I have, we can stop. But I have my 3 coaching. There's going to be 2 sets of 3 here. Okay, 2 sets of 3, 6 reps. First off, my coaching overview. Number 1 is when you coach an athlete, first you embrace the obvious. Throwers throw, jumpers jump, sprinters sprint, swimmers swim, bicyclists bicycle, triathletes do 3 things. If you get yourself away from that, you're too stupid to be a coach. If I've gone to American track and field practices, you guys call it athletics, where I've watched the athletes do 4-lap warm up, all kinds of mobility, group plyometrics, mobility work, all kinds of things, but none of them are doing the event. I don't see the hurdlers hurdling. And then when everyone's warmed up, the coach gets a piece of paper and starts telling them about, the bus will leave at 2:30. Be sure to bring your, and all the athletes cool off, and then they have to re-warm up. Embrace the obvious. If there are some research here in the United States came out that many Americans will not drink water when they're dehydrated. They would much rather have a pill or a drink. Well, one of the best ways to cure dehydration is to drink water. If you have a bad case of lack of sleep. That's the obvious. Number 2 is invest wisely in asymmetrical risks. I don't want to go in too much depth on it, but basically, if all you do in your soccer football practice is play, you just throw the ball out and the kids play for a couple hours. That's great, but what wins games, from the German model, is the dead ball situation. What wins games is when the game's tied at the end and you have the shootout. If you go into the World Cup and you don't know who your 10 people in a row who's going to kick in the shootout, you're too stupid to be a coach. If you're standing there, there's Costa Rica standing over there, and I'm going, hey, James, how you feeling today? Would you like to kick? You're too stupid to be a coach. So asymmetrical risks are when you look at those little things that have so much more value than just the fundamentals. One of the things we do, for example, with my throwers is we do something called a 1-throw competition. It does happen sometimes that you foul your first throw and you foul your second throw. Well, you got 1 throw. So I spend a lot of time with them practicing 1 throw, because the amount of arousal and the amount of tension to deal with that single throw, it's a much different throw the best thing you can possibly do is step in the ring on your first throw your lifetime best, and win the competition, and then everyone's cheering, shaking your hand, and then you got 5 more throws with no pressure on you. Isn't that wonderful? Well, and it does happen. I've had it happen, but not very often. So and then number 3, when we get to elite athletes, is we cannot control the outcome. We just can't. No offense to my British brothers and sisters, but if if we took a whole bunch of young British young men from one of your elite schools and had them go to Jamaica to have a track and field meet with just sprinting only, I'm sure these are fine young lads from Eton and all that. I mean, I'm sure they're nice kids, but the Jamaican kids are going to blow them out of the water. Okay. If you send that same group of kids to the inner cities of America to play a basketball game, God bless the Eton boys, but they're not. I mean, the score will be lopsided. However, if I'm coaching them, 3 words, I will respect the process. They will know the rules of the game. They will have a skill set appropriate. I can't control the outcome, but I can control what we do. In fact, if I'm a good enough coach, I could maybe slow the game down, hope for the best, try to win those little wins, those minor wins that we talk about in every game. You add up enough small wins and all of a sudden you're edging yourself to success. Part 2, okay, so that's part 1. That's the mental framework. Embrace the obvious, asymmetrical risks, respect the process. The next thing is, how do we get that done? And that, James, and you guys would all remember, Peter, Paul, James, you were all there at my workshops, right in there?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, we've done the art of coaching that you did.
Yeah, so we always joke about my 3 assistant coaches. There's coach repetition. So number 1 is to get us to where we need to be and embrace the obvious. You're going to tell me what you need to do, and I'm going to figure out ways to out repetition your opponents. We are going to do more reps than the opponent. How we do it, like for example, my discus throwers, my shot putters, we throw into walls a lot. So because the wall stops the implement, it slides down, we pick it up, and we do it again. So we're going to do, while you're doing 6 to 10 throws in an hour, we're going to do 500. Over time, I'm going to destroy you with those. The next I joke about is coach simplicity. My job is to always it's my job to simplify everything so that I've got you doing the most important things. I teach the discus with 4 words: stretch, 1, 2, 3. That's the whole way I teach the discus. Now, it is a complicated, beautiful move, but I've simplified it that we can build on it, so that at a meet one time, I yelled out short 2. You're not supposed to coach in track and field, but no one's going to understand what the hell short 2 means, so I was fine. And my athlete went from 7th place to a state championship on 1 throw, because I was able to give so much information by saying short 2. And my job as a coach is to make everything so that in the heat of a moment, with 10 seconds left to go, or not taking a timeout, I might say buzzard. Okay. And buzzard means that all of us go into position, sprint into position, and are ready to go. I'm not going to take a timeout to give the other team time to set up. I'm just going to say buzzard or eagle or falcon, which is our code word for what we're about to do. You make sense? Simplify, simplify, simplify. And of course, the last one is gravity. And the idea of gravity is, I'm going to find something that I think is important, and I'm going to push that down our kids' throats. One of the things, people who work with me, they're shocked at, for example, how serious I take things like the hinge and the loaded carry. I mean, we are just, coach gravity is this idea that we're gonna out this you, whatever this is. Okay. So so that's step one, and that's the coaching. So that's training appropriate. When we show up at a competition, I have my fancy 3-word assessment. Are you ready? Can you remember my 3-word assessment?
Can you go?
Can you go? And there's only 2 answers. There's yes, and there's no. And if you say no, I will remind you about how stupid you are, and that this might be the only chance you ever get. I did this, and it's funny that it just pinged up again, but I did, somebody asked me a question on my podcast, and it was really, when it was about sending in athletes if they're injured. And somebody wrote in, it was a European. Well, are you a physical therapist? Are you qualified? Frankly, and can I swear, I don't give a shit. I'm not a bad person. I just don't give a shit. We have a thing here in the United States called the Super Bowl, where the number of people who play in the Super Bowl is a very, very, very small number. To be on the American Olympic team as a discus thrower, that's not a very big pot of number of people. It's very small. So at the day of the Olympic trials, you show up and you say, I don't feel good. My bagel went down funny. I honestly don't care. And it's funny, I did this workshop I did a workshop like this. And I said, here's the interesting thing. You'll notice after a Super Bowl, how many of the players go in for minor surgeries and major surgeries. Well, Tom Brady, good to hear you guys nod. I mean, he is just this outlier of American football. He doesn't fit. After the Super Bowl, he went and got a surgery. Well, this person complaining and say, well, if he needed surgery, then he should not have been competing. Hall of Fames are filled with people who overcame injuries to compete. Greatness, as my coach Dick Notmeyer used to come, greatness comes to those who, dare to strain, dare the pain, dare the agony. He was a real, and if you were, if you could go, you go. And then after, there's my 2-word summary, which is now what? And now what is a broad topic. One of the things, for example, I'm preparing now to retire as a professor. I only have about 6 weeks left, which is just interesting considering how long I've done this career. Well, I've already done the now what conversation. Those couple of hours every day, whatever, it's a fair amount of work, are now going to be, I have a new grandson on the way. I'll have 3 grandchildren. I really want to spend more time cultivating my online work. I have some books I want to write. I have some stuff I want to retype and rework on. I'm going back to the first published article I ever wrote. It was on Beowulf, and I want to retype it because it's not digitized. And then as I'm looking it over, I'm like, that's good, but I need to make a few comments. And it's like, so the now what for a retired person is very important. If you want to have a miserable life, don't ask the question, now what? So for example, and are all 3 of you married?
I am, yeah. Pete's not married.
I'm cohabiting.
Cohabiting.
Well, Peter, I wasn't really asking. It was just
married, a question. But that ended badly. We'll not go there.
He didn't want to answer that. He's going to have another domestic.
Peter, I wasn't asking if you want to marry me. I was just asking the question. It was just a broad topic.
That's all right. She didn't like my hair.
But I think one of the things, when I do, I've ministered many weddings, and one of the things I talk about with the couple is I try to talk to them about the now what experience after the honeymoon's over. There's some things. I mean, men smell, bowel movements stink, who's going to make breakfast? If one's a vegan and one's a carnivore, good luck on that. Now what? So now what is this very general question. But what I'm trying to get to sometimes, if the athlete had one of the greatest performances of their life, you know what? The amount of feedback we have from that is almost none. It's very difficult to get quality feedback from a victory. In fact, I just did a podcast. It's not available yet, but it's on this thing here. It's this is what you get. Yeah, I know. You guys see how you can't see it? This is this is what you get for second place at the Pleasanton Highland Games, the largest Highland Games in the world. This is what second place looks like.
What does first place look like?
Well, it's a lot of trophies and it's a lot of pictures and it's a lot. You get a name on a trophy forever, and it's pretty cool. I mean, I hate to say you're immortal, but it's pretty cool. Second place is that, and my friend Mike Bukowski used to wear that to remind him that he took second. When I took second, I did the velocity diet, which is 6 protein shakes a day for 28 days, and I was a miserable bastard because you don't learn anything when you win. However, it's my job as a coach to pull out. I'll say something like, so what happened? And my young thrower, Eric, who was so nervous at this meet, he was just so nervous. And he goes, Coach, I forgot everything. I only remembered the first thing you ever told me. And of course, I leaned in. It's like, okay, pick up your right foot. Well, because he was so nervous, had so much nervous energy, when he picked up his right foot, that right foot stayed ahead of his upper body. And he had, actually it works out perfectly for once, a 10-meter personal record in the discus on his first throw. Folks, you add 10 meters on your first throw, you win. The competition's crushed. So actually he's the only one, he may be the only person I've ever learned anything from a victory. It's funny, you look over this career that I started coaching in 1979, and when you win an American football championship, you sit around, all you do is pat each other on the back and you forget all the lessons, how you got there. It takes losing to remind you how to win. So when we lose, I try to break it down as best I can. And what I've discovered is I've come up with this little triangle. And the triangle is 3 things: tension, arousal, and heart rate. You're fine with me just yabbering, right?
Yeah, that's brilliant. Yeah.
Okay, so the tension scale, we'll just put on the left side of the triangle, and it goes from 1 to 10, and 10 would be being electrocuted, 9 would be a deadlift, 1 would be smoking dope in a hot tub. Discus throwers need to be about a 4 in the tension level. You need to be pretty loose to be a javelin thrower, hammer thrower, discus thrower. Shot putters can be much higher. You need more physical tension. Power lifters live at 8, 9. Olympic lifters would be 4, 5 in the snatch, 7 or 8 in the clean and jerk. So you have to actually be sure you're winding yourself up physically before what you're doing. Very often my athletes will say, it was weird, coach. I teach that relax and win. That's where you shake things off. But you'll notice my good athletes, you'll see them between rounds playing with their tension level. A good way to build tension up would be maybe do a plank, take a bucket of water and pour it on your head. A good way to loosen it up is to put some clothes on and shake. That'll loosen you up. Tension's cousin, the mental side, is arousal. And when I teach adolescents and military people, they always giggle when I say arousal. And if you're male, I say the same thing. If your arousal's too high, nothing's going to happen. If your arousal's too low, nothing's going to happen. So arousal's the mental side. I don't like that nonsense of all the screaming and stuff like that before a contest. In fact, I actually use soccer football as a good example for how I want my American football players to be before a game. You'll notice now that in soccer football, before most matches now, the 2 teams walk out for the national anthems, and very often they have a child in front of them, right? That's a great level of arousal to prepare yourself for a 90-minute. How long do you think a soccer match takes? probably it's 2.5 hours. So no, between halftime and extended time.
Oh no, literally 1 hour and 45.
But with
the half time, because it's only literally like it's 45 minutes each way, and then there's usually 15 minutes in between.
And then extended time will sneak up on 2 hours then, right?
Oh yeah, if you have like a half, an extra 30 minutes at the end potentially, but that's.
Well, no, I meant like for injury time. You know, the injury number.
Oh no, maybe only another 10 minutes. So maybe 2 hours, 2 hours absolute max, probably.
Yeah, okay. And then if there's a shootout so my thought on it, we'll just say 2 hours. Just that's kind of mentally where, if as a head coach, I would be trying to prepare my athletes for about a 2 and occasionally a little bit longer than 2 hour thing. Okay.
Experience,
So my job as a head coach is to look at the whole thing. Well, there's no way in hell you can be screaming your head off for an entire 2 hours. You would just pass out in exhaustion. So the mental arousal level you want before the World Cup final might be a little bit more than you think. Yes, the fans are losing their shit. Yes, and they're playing with those damn things at the South. Remember, was it South Africa? What was that?
Vuvuzela.
Oh,
they were horrible. There's people
so
walking around town blowing in those, and it's like, what are you doing? Stop it.
So, the fans can lose their minds, but my team has to be at the appropriate arousal level to handle 2 hours. Now, if I'm about to do a lifetime best deadlift, in fact, my dentist told me an interesting thing. I should have been wearing a mouthpiece most of my career. I've been destroying my teeth since 1965. But a massive deadlift takes a lot of arousal to do. Okay.
So you said 9 out of 10, didn't you, for a deadlift?
Well, that's physical tension.
Okay.
But you might also have to be, I went to the Irish powerlifting championships the last time I was in Galway. And it was interesting to watch people try. You could tell who was new and who was old, because it's so when you first lift, you don't have enough tension, and you talk to your friends and you look over at the side judges to make sure your deadlift was okay. Well, you ain't doing that with 300 kilos, I'll tell you that. Okay. And then you get better and you start to lose your mind. And then towards the end of your career, you have a ton of arousal, but you look like this. Let's do this. I mean, it's funny. I was getting ready. I was in one meet. I was behind by 2 centimeters, which is nothing in discus throwing. I mean, that's probably a measurement error. And I was getting ready for my last throw, and one of my friends came up to me and said, "You got to go after it." And I went, "Yeah, I know." My arousal was through the roof, but I was consciously turning it down, because a discus thrower doesn't want to be at 9. You want to be at 4. And famously, I smiled when I got in the ring to ensure my arousal level and tension level were at the right spot. And then at the base of that triangle would be heart rate. So, one of the things I tell my discus throwers all the time is you want your heart rate. Well, if you train and your heart rate, say in the 90s, and then you come to a track meet and you're sitting in a chair and you get up and you go in the ring and you're at 75, you actually it sounds weird, but you have to raise your heart rate. Of course, if you're 140, you better slow that bad boy down. And one of the things I got this from a Soviet study on soccer players. Soccer, gentle listener, comes from the phrase association football and rugby football when they were introduced to the rest of the world. So it is okay to call it soccer. You're welcome.
So share.
And then what happened was, the study was, they would have these guys who were brilliant in practice doing side, kicks from the corner kicks. Brilliant. But when the game hit, they would miss it. Well, they did, instead of just saying this guy's a choke and lousy, they put on early heart rate monitors and found out that in practice, this guy's doing corner kicks with his heart rate at 110. In the middle of the game, his heart rate's 160. That's 2 different sports, man. They're two different things. Famously, one of the most famous American basketball coaches told me, free throws when tired is the key to winning the game. Shooting the free throw, talking to your buddy in an empty stadium, court, whatever, is miles different than having played an entire game, sweating like a pig, having the opposing people going like this in front of you. Those are not the same sports. So you have to train your appropriate tension level, arousal level, and get yourself into the right heart rate. Most of now what is to walk backwards with them and say, Peter, what was your tension like? It was, God, I was just so nervous. I just couldn't calm down. Okay, was that your arousal or your tension? Because the nice thing about tension arousal, they almost become the exact same thing. I use physical tools to bring the athlete's arousal down. Shaking, doing a little jog with extra sweats on, whatever we call them, kits. Shaking all your limbs out, smiling, wiggling your jaw. That physical stuff seems to help bring down the arousal level. I think it's possible to use your brain to relax physically. I do that daily with meditation. And the great thing about meditation, it does teach you to bring everything down. It teaches your brain to bring your body down. I just think it's much easier for your body to bring your brain down for many athletes. And then when you have an athlete 1, 2, 3 years, they've bought into meditation, they've bought into the relax and win shaking, then you have an opportunity to get you to both. And the interesting thing is, towards the end of their career, they realize that their brain can bring their heart rate down, their brain can bring their tension down, their brain can bring their arousal down, and that's when you have those weird performances where the person will say, I'm only about half as strong as I used to be, but I threw or I jumped so much farther than I ever thought I could.
I suppose brings us on to, I'm just aware of the time, but something like easy strength, which must be playing with some of those principles we've just talked about in the way that you train all the time, because your arousal level and your tension levels and all those things, the complex, well, we make it sound more complex than maybe it is, but that interplay is really what comes down to success over the long term, as well as that captured in the moment in the competition.
Exactly, Paul. And that's why I think that easy strength is the way you train athletes now. So, gentle listener, easy strength, its roots are ancient. I've been discovering that's how strongmen trained 100 years ago. It's the way most people trained from about 1945 until the advent of anabolic steroids, when you could do any damn thing you wanted. It shows back up in a lot of research here and there. When I first met Pavel, he told me, for the next 40 days, pick 5 lifts, do them every single workout, never go to failure, never even get close to failure, never miss a rep. And I went, and that's when it was interesting. We were at dinner the other night, and this woman said she's 46. And I said, here's an interesting thing. And she was already moaning how old she was, child. And I said, here's the strange thing. The best years of my career as a discus thrower were 47, 48, 49, and 50. I mean, I don't know how to say that any nicer, but I don't know how many of you know any 50-year-olds, but a 50-year-old who throws a discus really far is really kind of unusual. And it's because of loaded carries and easy strength. And the idea on the easy strength protocol is that you go in and you try to train the nervous system. So if it's something simple, well, let me just give you my 2 favorite ones for anybody listening. The incline bench press, because I never did it, and the thick bar deadlift. Those are my 2 base ones I started with. I just left the weights on the racks because I have my own home gym. I start off on the bench, the incline. My first workout was 75K for 2, and a couple sets of 2. It was nothing. Then I went to a couple sets of 5. It was nothing. Then I jumped to 85, 95, 100. Within a few weeks by myself in the garage, I did my lifetime best of 145 for 2. no spotter, with my wife's new car at the base of my feet. If I missed, it would have been a bad thing for all of us. It was weeks, and I had a lifetime PR by about 5 kilos, just by never missing and getting the reps in. On the thick bar deadlift, I started off. It was this one. It was that thick. For those you can't see,
Like
it's how much? It's 3. We would say 3. It was a 3-inch bar.
Yeah.
Well, and I start off at 120, and I ended up at. Hold on, just a sec. So the bar is it'd be about a 10 centimeter bar, really a thick bar. I started off at 120, and I ended up a couple of weeks later at 145. And I never failed, never did anything, and yet I go to these track meets, and people are going, "Are you on some kind of drug or something?" And I go, "Look at me," and they'd be like, "No, if it is, you're not doing it very well." Yeah. But my distance kept going because, and you're right, Paul, and I like your point here, is because what I was doing is I was embracing the obvious. I was getting the reps in. I was never missing, so I wasn't teaching my body how to miss. And before you know it, I'm out in the ring. I'm on the on the Highland Games, and just really doing well, training probably a fourth of what my competitors were doing. In the weight room, maybe even more than a fourth.
Yeah. We had Brad Kearns on last week. I don't know if you know Brad. He works with Mark Sissons, and he's an endurance athlete. And I think he was 55 when he set the world golf speed record for the fastest hole. He was 55, wasn't he?
He was, yeah. He's 56 now. Yeah, I think he was 55 when he did it. Yeah.
I mean, he's not a strength athlete, but he very much takes a similar principle of getting the reps in, getting the time on your feet, doing it, but making sure that you've got something in the tank each time that you can come back, repeat, and build success in every week, rather than, and Paul McElroy goes on about it. I know we spoke about Paul McElroy last time we were on, but he talks about he doesn't want to find what he can't do. He wants to expand his current kind of strength levels. He doesn't want to just keep hitting the ceiling of his ability.
Exactly. And I think we're all singing the same song here. The thing what many listeners are missing is that elite sport isn't doing what people think. I call them Gatorade commercials here in the United States, but it's these sports supplement commercials where black guy high fives a white guy, and because of that we end racism in America because we're drinking an orange salty sugary drink. But most elite performers now, it's interesting because you see it in track and field a lot. If you go see a really good athlete train, you're going to be disappointed because you'll be sitting around a lot going, well, is this guy ever going to do anything? Ryszard Kaplakanich or something, this great Polish writer, talks about when he was young, Edmund Pianowski, the great Polish discus thrower, was training, and they thought he was going to break the world record. And so he went to practice, and there's a farmer sitting next to him, and the two of them are talking. I guess this guy's going to break the world record. Oh, okay. And so Piatowski throws for a while, and then at the end, the coach says, "Yep, that was over the world record." And the farmer guy goes, "Well, when are they going to start? I didn't see anything." All he was doing was throwing the discus. He kept expecting something to happen. And if you go to a track practice, an elite sprinter might sprint faster than any of us can even imagine, and then put all their sweats on, relax, walk, they might get 3 reps in a 2-hour period. It's boring to watch that. It's not very exciting. It's not very sexy. And Paul, you're right. So easy strength, loaded carries, all tie in to the now what arousal, tension, heart rate system. To the point that I don't see any difference between any of them.
Well, it's so funny because I have to always remind. I mean, one of the things in a class that when we're running classes or whatever, we've got a time frame and we've got to get everyone fit and healthy. But really building rest periods in. Most people don't ever think about a rest period. They just think about how much sweat's on their brow and how hard they've worked and their effort level and their heart rate. And I like heart rate; it tells me something. But a lot of people value the value of their workout based on how high they hit their heart rate, in terms of its maximum output.
Which is why I've moved to original strength instead of rest periods. So if you do something like a press, I get you down on the ground, we'll do some kind of mobility movement, because the heart rate leaps when you get up and down off the ground, and everybody needs mobility. So I agree. I got rid of rest periods years ago to just doing mobility in between sets, because I think, for one thing, it halves the workout, and also too, it keeps people active. So active rest is a phrase I first read from the Soviets, but I'm a huge believer in active rest, partially because I taught adolescents for so long. And if you allow 5-minute rest periods with adolescents, you're probably too stupid to be in charge. Something bad's going to happen.
Yeah.
Yeah, you just turn around like that and turn back, and they're all lying like this, like
literally.
I
tell people that all you need to do, it's like a magic show. You turn around and someone's dead on the floor. It's like someone's missing
standing there
an
going, it wasn't me. It just happened.
But, yeah. So there you go. That's the now what. Let me just see if there's anything else I wanted to add. No. I think I covered.
Fantastic, Dan. I think that although on the surface you were talking a lot about athletics and more elite performers and things, obviously, like you say, there's so much that the everyday listener, the everyday person, the normal population can take from what you were saying, and hopefully they will. I think it was brilliant just to hear that insight and those small.
Can I add just one quick thing, James, if you don't mind?
Yeah,
you made a good point. As a parent, I use these tools. See, one of the things you got to learn as a parent, as a spouse, as a lover, if you're Pete,
live-in lover,
is you have to learn to not react but respond. So the toolkit, the now what toolkit, when my daughter Kelly, she's going to be 31 now. She told me one time, I'm 31 and I still don't know how to push your buttons, which is a phrase in America. I don't know if it. Okay. And the reason is if I got a call from the school that she did something inappropriate, and she did, she punched a boy one time. I had this great skill set of being able to go, now I might be really mad, but I'm turning it off. My daughter, Lindsay, did something wrong in school, and I disagreed with, I didn't think she did anything wrong personally. I still to this day think it's the teacher's fault, and we won't go into why. But at the meeting, I sat like this. And everybody wanted feedback because, I was all their administrator. And I was like, okay, whatever you decide is fine. And I got up and left. And Lindsay was like, she still didn't know if she was in trouble or not. And I wanted her to think that. I wanted her to think, and so the skills are great. If you get into a fender bender, if you come out with a machete and try to kill the other person, it's going to escalate. If you get out of your car and go, well, that's unfortunate. Life is a little bit simpler,
That's so interesting. I know obviously we had Josh Hillis on just 2 days ago, and he was talking about in terms of eating, eating skills and that sort of thing, and separating the stimulus from the response, and defusing the two. So you have a craving for a candy bar or cookie, and some people, they have that craving and straight away they think, I need to satisfy that craving and have it. And he was just talking about just taking 10 minutes away from it and thinking about it and just diffusing the stimulus and the response, which is so in tune with what you're saying.
Well, I mean, don't take this, and I'm going to say a sentence. I haven't really had alcohol since January 1st. It was one of my goals is to get my body weight way down. I want to lift as a 102 kilo lifter or even lighter if I can. And that's just for life, you know. So I did what my friend Erica says, you cut out X. You find an X in your life and cut it out. Well, you know, I like drinking. I enjoy it. I go to bars. In fact, last night I was designated driver on St. Patrick's Day. And so I've had to do the same kind of thing. It's dinner, so I have to have wine. Well, I now have, I put a pause in there, and now I don't have it. And it's very, and by the way, I'm not anti-alcohol. I'm not really very many things. But the idea is giving up X sometimes, and no matter what goal you have to give up something. And that's why I think athletics is such a good life primer. Like, you know, as a professor, it doesn't bother me, I mean, to do all the nonsense that comes along with the job, because my athletic career taught me that the nonsense is just part of it's just part of it. You know, you show up to a track meet, you weigh your discus in. The weigh masters I think they hire them because they're almost universally assholes, and they argue about this is a 1/100th of a millimeter too thick. What is that? Well, here, it's because it's dirty where you measure it. There's a piece of dirt here. Now it's fine. Oh yes, of course. But you just learn to put up with it. So yeah, these skills carry over. Josh is exactly right. Get yourself to stop reacting and start responding.
Excellent. Dan, thank you so much for joining us again. I'm aware we're just about out of time, so but that was great. I mean, hopefully everyone can listen to that again and again and take something from it each time. So Pete, do you want to say anything in closing?
I'm gonna have to listen to all that again, but no, that was really good. What I do like is he's looking like it now as well. This is his blue steel look if you're watching. So that was his arousal. That was when he was highly aroused, not highly aroused. When he's angry and when he's not angry, that's what he looks like, which is great. Apart from when he said his daughter hit a boy punched a boy in the face, and there was a little smile came on there.
They never found the teacher.
You were like, shit. Yeah.
It reminds me of that. Was it Far Side cartoon or Gary Glasston? There used to be those cartoons in paper. And there was the one of the Labrador, and it had 6 pictures of a Labrador with exactly the same feature: angry, happy, sad, excited. That's what we want to go for.
Yeah. Oh, hey, one thing. If anyone wants the Dan John University, I have if they want to use the word March, like the month March, we're doing a thing called March for March. We're doing rucking all March. But if any of your listeners want the big discount, $29 for 3 months, just put in March, and that's just for your listeners. Okay.
Fantastic. Thank you.
It's usually $29 a month. So, you know.
Oh, brilliant. We'll put that into the notes and into the Facebook and everything else. Mr. Paul Bassett, did you have any final thoughts?
Well, no, really, it was the Labrador quote today. That's what I was building up to.
You know, if you can find it, send it to me, because I think that would make a really good a good thing to have in a workshop.
Yeah, I think so.
No, because that's.
I think that's something similar where it's Darth Vader, and it's just all the different expressions of Darth Vader. It's obviously all exactly the same. So you could use that one. Anyway, Dan, thank you so much. We will definitely set up you coming back over to England, to Chelmsford in Essex at some stage as soon as we're allowed to. That would be fantastic, and I'm sure we will speak again and have you on again in the future. But
well, there's the Phantom Menace.
Well, I was thinking, or is it going to be the Force Awakens?
Any direction. We could actually turn to because those shows kind of go. We could do the Indiana Jones ones next. Okay?
Yes. Oh, Raiders of the Lost Ark first. Yeah.
So we'll do Raiders first, and I'll come up with a theme.
Yeah, brilliant. Okay, thank you so much, Dan. And just a quick one for all the listeners, please make sure you like, subscribe, share, leave a review on Spotify, iTunes, wherever you're listening to us. And we will see you again very soon. Thank you for listening, and we will catch up soon. Cheers, guys. Bye-bye.
You've been listening to Health Oddity with Peter Lant, Paul Bassett, and James St. Pierre. To get your regular fix of hype-free health, you can subscribe and leave a review wherever you get your favorite podcasts. You can find out more on today's and other topics at healthoddity.com or find us on Facebook or Instagram by searching for Health Oddity.